achieve Cesar's dream of farm workers across this country having the same rights and protections as other working people? I don't know, Rob, if you'd like to take a stab.
Well, I suppose the first answer is organizing on a nationwide, massive scale, but when you think about it, I mean, still, after the, 70 years after the New Deal, farm workers are not covered by the National Labor Relations Act, are not covered by overtime provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act. As I've said, in many states are not covered by workers' compensation. So one thing we need to elect legislators and congresspeople that are going to correct this inequity. The other thing, of course, it comes back to the whole question of immigration reform. Even if farm workers have rights on paper, it's very difficult to enforce those rights if you're afraid. If you know the employer can report you, if somebody can report you to the Immigration Service. And so part of it is we've got to change, we've got to get people that basic legal status as one of the first steps.
Thank you, Rob. And Don Rogelio, I'd like to ask you, because you've been working as a farm worker for 47 years, if you could tell us what you believe it's going to take to achieve Cesar's dream of farm workers across this country having the same rights and protections as other working people. ¿A la pregunta? Sí, a la pregunta es ¿qué es lo que usted piensa necesita ocurrir para que el sueño de César Chávez de extenderle las protecciones a los que trabajan en los campos, que ellos tengan las mismas protecciones que tienen otros trabajadores?
Sí, I think we have to work together to keep organized more people, because the dream of Cesar was that we have to organize ourselves and administrate our contracts ourselves. And when he found that the Union, United Farm Workers, was for the same people.
Special guests that will be joining us very soon, and so we're going to have to keep this panel relatively short, and we'll end at about 3. So I want to hear from the panel, and I'll go join them in just a minute. But I thought what I would do is to make some opening comments here just about what the President has directed his cabinet to do relative to an inclusive America, because it is so important for us to make sure that as we move forward, as the demographics of America continue to change, as diversity becomes so much a part of the foundation for the greatness of this nation in the future, that we are making sure that we are inclusive of everybody so that no one gets left behind. So as a Secretary of the Interior, I have the great honor of serving this President of the United States, Barack Obama, as we have moved forward and trying to change the world in a lot of different ways. But in my own lane, and one of the things that I have the honor of doing is being the custodian of America's natural resources and natural heritage. That means, yes, I'm responsible for everything that's happening in our oceans and our 700 million acres of onshore lands, and dealing with oil and gas and renewable energy and our national parks and our wildlife refuges, all of those things that are so important. But as part of that mission, yes, custodian of natural resources, but also custodians of America's history and heritage. And so it's in that vein that I'm very proud to say that the work that we have done there is to recognize that we have so much more work to do, and our work really is just beginning. But I'll give you an example in the African American world, which is very much a part of our world and very much a part of the civil rights struggle of America and our march towards a more perfect union. This president moved forward with the creation of the 396 National Park at Fort Monroe, which was a beginning and the end of slavery in America and the crucible for the thinking of Abraham Lincoln in the Emancipation Proclamation. that my family had come across on the Mayflower, that we had been a part of the founding of Plymouth Rock, and we had gone from east to west. So that's just a long way of telling you all here again that we have so much more to do in terms of telling the story of Latinos and Latinas throughout the United States of America. So in the Department of Interior, what we have done is move forward with the founding of the Latino Heritage Initiative, which will, by June of this year, we will be able to announce the conclusion of essentially what will be the blueprint of the story of Latinos. So then will guide the National Park Service long after I'm gone, but it will make sure that we are telling the story of the farm workers, of immigration, of economics, of the military contributions of Latinos, and so on and so forth. 16 different chapters in that study. We'll have that done by June of this year. That then will guide us in terms of making sure that we're telling the whole story of the contribution of American Latinos and Latinas. But we don't want to wait for that study to come by our way, and so just last year I had the great honor of standing with the Chavez family at the 40-acre site in California, where we said this place where César Chavez fasted for all those days in the 1970s and in the 1960s, 1968, the longest of his fast before Robert Kennedy and Ethel Kennedy visited him and he broke his fast, that place is a place that has a very important role in our history, and that place should be a national historic landmark, and we made it so, and I'm very proud of the fact that we did it. Under this president, you also will be hearing a lot more about some of our efforts in terms of the recognition and the contribution of Latinos throughout the United States of America. And I would just say this because I know him very well. I spent 2 days with him last week in Nevada and New Mexico and Oklahoma. He believes in his heart, what you all believe in your heart, and that is our continuing march towards a more perfect union means that everybody has to be a part of that march, and that the Latino community is very much a part of that march. So I am very proud to be here with the honorees today, and to be able to moderate this panel. So with that, I guess I could go sit down there, but I think it gets better if I just sit down here and look at unique down there. So or am I supposed to move with it? Can I stand? Can I sit? Okay. So how many of you think César Chávez is a big deal? Okay. Earlier this week at the Department of Labor, one of the nation's wisest Latinas, Hilda Solis, our Secretary of Labor, named the big hall in the Department of Labor in the honor of César Chávez. So it now bears his name as a leader whose life is now recognized there in the Department of Labor. And as we were there, it was very obvious with Dolores Huerta family and others that he contributed so much to what we are today and the opportunities that we all have. So I think the question that I would ask the panel, and let us remember that we are actually live on Facebook here and other video. And so that the question, this first question, which came in from Facebook, is this: what does the Chavez, César Chávez's legacy mean to you today? And how does your work relate to that legacy? So let us take a couple of minutes and say a little bit about yourself and respond to that question. And why don't we just start here with you, Rose, and then we'll go down to Nita and on down the road. So start with you, Rose. And give Rose another round of applause. See now, she is a true champion for all the great work that she's done.
Thank you, Senator. You were a senator, but you're a secretary.
Once a senator, always a senator.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful event, and also for the recognition of my work, which represents many of the people that are leaders in my community that inspired the work that I'm doing and have devoted most of my life. And in answer to your question, I think what means César Chávez's work means to me today is to continue the work of what Tierra del Sol Housing Corporation is doing in New Mexico and West Texas with farm workers in converting the volunteer labor that farm workers are willing to do because they know how to toil in the fields with low pay and much distress, in also building their own homes for self-help through self-help housing. And I think that the continuation of the leadership in the community in the Southwest and the relationship that we had with César Chávez while he was alive made a lot of good changes in our community with field standards that were improved, as well as the abolishment of the short hoe, and on and on. Every year that he came into New Mexico, we identified many of the improvements that are in our communities today.
Thank you very much, Rose. For New Mexico and for Texas, great places with great Latino communities and great leaders like Rose. Give her a round of applause. Nita Gonzalez from Colorado. I have this, I was going to write this, that says Nita 93 because I was her campaign chairman when she ran for the school board back in 1993. So anyway, Nita, what's your response to the question, and tell us a little bit about you?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for this honor, and also just to recognize that I sit here because of my father, Rodolfo Cogio Gonzalez. We're a family of 8, an activist family. I grew up as an activist family and learning the history, quite frankly, Karen, as you well know, from the Mother Earth, from here out, not from the East End in my house. So, and that I want to share with you that the work we do, which was really included in the introduction, Escuela Tlatelolco is the mother of school reform and choice. 7 parents out of the Crusade for Justice were bold enough to start their own school when Denver public schools would not meet the needs of our youngsters, and our children weren't succeeding academically. So here we are 41 years later, serving pre-K through 12, a very different model. Most of your models are separated out. Pre-K through 12 as familia in a school with 401 of our graduates, and of those graduates, 72% have their bachelor's degree, 32% own their own businesses, and 22% have their graduate degrees and never once forgot where they came from and are still activists in their community today. That's the job of education. Not only to give you here because of Rodolfo Cogio Gonzalez and my mother. I mean, I have to mention her. She lives in my household. There's 8 of us. And my dad had to come screaming and kicking to feminism since he had six girls and 2 sons. And because of the legacy of César Chávez and Helen Chávez. César could not do what he did. I understand that without Helen being part of it. So that legacy for me has always been about that, yes, we can. I never think about, do you ever go into meetings where people say, well, we can't do that because of this or the budget or where's the money? I never start a meeting that way. I say, what do we want to do? And let's figure out how to do it. And while I agree that we have to get our youngsters educated and prepared to vote, they need to know why they vote. And they need to hold the politicians accountable to meet the agenda that is a people's agenda. That's a legacy of César Chávez for me. And I really am honored to be here. And I'm honored to be along with the other 9 champions here with you. I'm just so humbled by all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. And Nancy Cubano. The Puerto Rican population of our nation, and the Puerto Rico is just such an important part of our history, and yet so often a forgotten part of the history of America. But I think some 4 million population in the island, and probably even more of a greater population even in the United States. So tell us, what's your answer to the question, a little bit about you?
Sure, so I'm going to start by answering, a little bit about me, but first, just like Nita and everybody here, I'm honored to be here around, all of you. So a little bit about myself. I came from a family of, there was no if. You are going to go to college. There was no thinking about it. It was just, you knew you were going to go to college. My grandmother did, my parents did, and everybody in my family did. When I came here to the United States, I saw the need of Latinos wanting to go to college. To me, it was like, why is it that you're thinking about it? Or you don't think about it, just you have to go to college. And now I'm working at a school where that's their sole purpose. Just like César Chávez was wanting to just community, knowledge is power. That's exactly what I'm trying to do with my students. And our advisory is something that we call in KIP, is more than a homeroom. This homeroom is 15 kids that are with me from 10th grade all the way through, till they graduate in seniors in high school. So I'm like their mom. So I don't just have one kid at home, I have 15 at school. And KIP gives us a cell phone. So those kids can actually call us. So there's no excuse. There's no if. There's no excuses. So that's one thing. And 2 years ago when the principal called me and he told me, well, we need to pick a name for each advisory. So what do you think, what name will be appropriate for your advisory? Automatically I thought of César Chávez. Who else? The core values were just blended just perfectly with the core values of the school. Leadership, community service, and that's basically what I'm trying to aim for my students. For not just to go to college, to go through college and give back to the community. So that's basically my goal.
Thank you, Nancy. Let me turn it over to Reeve, Help for Kids. Keep going.
Yes.
We want to hear from you. It's about the children.
I am just overwhelmed today, and I wanted to thank the Chavez family. I want to thank Julie and Christina, Cesar, Oscar, all the Chavez family, and Alejandro, who's in Phoenix, Arizona. And I was recruited by César Chávez when I was 17 years old. And he came to a restaurant where I was at and started asking me about my life. And I told him my dad was a migrant farm worker. And he says, you know, they only pay your dad $1 an hour when they're paying everybody else $2.25 an hour. And that made me mad because my dad had 17 kids at home. And he told me, well, you know, that he had a small hole and that he was hurting his back. And I said, that's true. So he recruited me when I was only 17 years old. And I remember Cesar told me, we need young people like you. We need you to help us pass flyers and go to these grocery stores that are selling grapes and lettuce. And people are buying it, but it's hurting our people. But he spoke his story to me with such compassion that at that young age that I said, I have to get behind this man and do. So I called my mom and I said, Mom, I'm going to go do a huelga. And she says, ¿Qué estás loca, mija? ¿Qué es una huelga? And I said, well, this man is going to help Dad. Dad won't have to work so hard. He's going to give him a big hole. He won't have to, work with that small hole. And Mom, I'll introduce him to Dad, and Dad will like him because he's going to help him. So I introduced Cesar to my dad. And that same day that I met Cesar, I went to boycott outside a grocery store. And my first day outside a grocery store, I was passing flyers and telling people not to buy lettuce because or grapes either because my dad got paid less. One of the ladies that came up to me and that I told her not to buy was shorter than me. She literally slapped me because I gave her a flyer. I mean, this was in the 70s when they would get away with that. But then I passed out my flyers that I wiped my mascara off my face because they didn't have waterproof mascara in those days. And I went back and I said, Cesar, this is what happened to me. And he says, ¿Qué te pasó? And I said, well, they gave me a cachetada. And he says, that's why God gave you two cheeks. Mija, turn the other cheek. And he's going to say, being compassionate. And I said, okay. So I just wiped off my face and I kept working. But I learned from this man the compassion that he had for people. And I want to thank the Chavez family so much for letting him to us and giving us his vision. I had just become a Christian. I wanted to become a minister, and I said, God, I want to do something big. I want to help somebody. And guess who walks into the restaurant I was working in that day? César Chávez. That was my first one. That was my first volunteer job, and we went and did huelgas in Marana, Arizona. San Luis, my sister Gloria went with us. And so what we are doing today is we are continuing the vision that he had to mentor young people, which I do through Help for Kids. some of the laws in Arizona are making it very difficult for me to continue what I do. The Senate Bill 1070, which I opposed, put a screeching halt to my ministry. I had 14 buses where I was picking up young people from the age of 18 under. That means 1,400 or 1,500 people, young students. I was picking up most of, from immigrant families and refugees. I was picking them up to feed them every week. But when they signed that bill in my state, I could no longer do that because we would become felons. So it put a screeching halt to that. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of voter registration, mentoring a lot of young people, and getting the right people in public office, because we need to vote out those people that are doing inhumane acts in my state. And I have to thank Alejandro Chavez, who's not here, but he helped me in my campaign. I ran for state senator, and my daughter Hannah Nunez, who was only 16 at the time, they worked really hard. We got 46 young people to help us in Arizona to get people registered, and I almost won, but I'm going to run again, and we're going to keep running, because I'm going to live a long time.
Thank you, Reverend, and let's turn over to Melinda, who continues to work with the UFW and the kids.
Yes, but you can't call them kids. Well, I got started, I learned about César Chávez when he died. The spring that César Chávez died is when I got involved with the farm worker movement. So 1993, I had just left my home of Mississippi Delta, came to North Carolina to go to divinity school at Duke, and was studying theology and trying to figure out what to do with my life. Knew I wanted to do something to give back to my community, and I ended up doing an internship with Student Action with Farm Workers. And the messages of CESAR are part of what we teach in that work, both the messages and how we do the work. But some of the messages that really resonated with me, that I think Chavez stood for, was this intersection between race, class, and culture. And so that is really what we try to do, is look at issues of racism in our communities in the South. Farm workers, there's a lot of racism. The majority of folks are Mexican and Mexican-American, but we still have a lot of African-American folks who work in the fields, whose parents and grandparents and great-grandparents have worked in the fields and who came here as slaves. So we have this legacy in the South that we have to talk about, that we have to learn from, and that we have to teach young people about. He also talked about class, about labor. For me, it was very much resonated for me growing up in a working class family in the Mississippi Delta and in a very segregated community. These issues of race and class I continued to struggle with them and figure out. I wanted to learn, and part of what we do is teaching young people about that intersection and what happens to people when both race and class, when they're both impacted by both race and class, which we all are, of course, no matter if you're oppressed or privileged on those sides. And the last piece is around culture. You know, this morning we were at the USDA and there was a mention of Teatro Campesino, and one of the things that we do with Student Action with Farm Workers is bring culture into the work. So helping young people particularly tell their own stories. And that was the most powerful part for me in getting involved with Student Action with Farm Workers, is learning to tell my own story as a white woman from the Mississippi Delta who grew up in a very racist community. What is my story in this movement? And part of it was, because of my work with SAF, I started asking questions in my own family and learned about my own family's experience as sharecroppers. I learned that my dad had to drop out of school at 6th grade to work in the fields. They don't talk about this history. So it really has taken me down this long path, this rabbit hole of learning about my own history, and that's one of the things that we do with young people. Majority of the young people we work with are from farm worker families. So unlike me, they have worked in the fields themselves, their parents are working in the fields, but part of what we do is help them to really learn about the larger socioeconomic, political issues that impact their family. We help them to act. So do meaningful work in their communities through direct service, through educating workers about pesticide safety, through organizing in North Carolina, supporting the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, another union to lift up, as well as to advocate for changes in the law, which we heard about earlier. We need to equalize the law for farm workers. It makes no sense, other than if we want to continue to have a racist class of society, to have farm workers treated differently under the law. So we try to provide these meaningful opportunities for young people to act. And then there's another part of it that I think Chavez lifted up, is to reflect on that. So let's learn, let's go deep and learn, let's act and do something, and then let's reflect on what does this mean for ourselves and share that with other people. So I've been really fortunate to be involved with SAF we're celebrating 20 years this year, and so we've had like 700 young people we've worked with deeply from across the country who come to the South to learn particularly about what's the story of the South around agriculture and labor and workers, and to do something for their families, for their communities. And I think that one of the messages that we share with young people that really is about César Chávez's legacy is that we're in this for the long haul. Whenever at the beginning we have summer internships, we bring 25 people together to work in the South with farm worker groups, and we always say at the end of their internship, now's the beginning, right? Because the idea is that this is work that we will do, as Rogelio mentioned. It's taken a long time to create this discrimination against farm workers in our community. It's going to take a long time to change it, but we're trying to build a movement of young people who are knowledgeable, who are willing to take a stand and willing to go deep in their own story to share that for the long haul. So,
Well, Melinda, on your closing comment there on the long haul. The Chavez family at one point told me about one of Cesar's sayings, which was not his, it was his mother. And it was his mom who taught him this saying, and he would say, she would say to him, hay más tiempo que vida. We have more time than life. And so yes, Cesar's mother has passed away. Saturday would be Cesar Chávez's 85th birthday. But here we are today at the White House with these 10 champions of change. And you just heard Melinda speak about how it is so important that we are in this for the long haul. And so with that, let me turn it over. We'll have a quick answer for, we have a little time? One more question. Let's see how, so from Jonathan Kirsch, just to make sure that we're watching, all of you who are watching online, we're collecting all those questions. They're going to come into all of us, and we're going to be able to answer at least some of them. So this is from Jonathan Kirsch, and he asked the panel, how do you inspire young people to want to give to others in need, to instill that passion for helping others? Not through simple charity or donating canned food to a shelter only, but truly doing the work that helps change lives for the better. Who wants to go? Steve.
So I work with young people, and the way that we inspire them is by telling them what's happening in Arizona and some of our laws. We have a lot of young people in Arizona that are committing suicide, that are dreamers. In my church, there was a young man that was deported, and his sister was so hurt by the fact that that was her only family, that she literally, at 16 years old, took her life. So when I tell stories to young people and say, young people in our state are dying because we need changes in our policy, we need you to get involved. So we tell the stories that become real to young people and how it's affecting life. A young person should not have to take their life because there's no hope or they don't feel anybody's listening to them. But I say you can be that voice for your neighbor, you can be that voice for the other young person. So I encourage them to come and be that voice and speak together. And I do support the DREAM Act. We need to make a way for them to stay and to work, and they are great contributors to our community.
Thank you very much, Eve.
Well, you know, Eve is very passionate, almost as much as I am when it comes to that. And I think education, a lot of us think about education in the terms of testing, and what does standardized testing tell you? Well, at Escuela Tlatelolco, that's not what we're concerned about. Good human beings that learn about their humanity and keeping their humanity, learn about their history that they hadn't learned about. And when they get engaged in that and know where they come from, then we also, at Escuela Tlatelolco, we have as part of the curriculum, our social justice curriculum, which requires them to be involved in the community. They don't graduate unless they are involved in the community. They have to also identify those issues, and then we say, okay, what do you want to do about it? Well, I don't know, miss. Well, yes, you do. You do know. Are you angry enough about it? Well, yes, I am, miss. Well, then if you're angry enough about it, let's take that, learn the strategies and skills that you need to organize, and let's organize around making change. And that we have to have young people believe absolutely they have the power to make the change. But I'm going to have this caveat. I'm going to tell you, culturally, we make change as family and community. young people are not divorced from us. And so when young people want to make change, we ask them to get started with their family. We bring whole families into rallies, into meetings, into marches, because that's how we made change in the 60s and 70s. You know, things didn't happen in this country, or I can, because we had the greatest cabinet secretary of interior, remember? Or we had the President Obama. Things happen and change in this country because people come together. It's called people power, marching. Women got the right to vote because they marched. We came out of Vietnam because this country marched. There was a civil rights movement, incredible civil rights movement that helped all communities of color believe that they could have one person, one vote, and have that opportunity to make change. So young people get engaged when it is personal to them, and when they are upset, it's our responsibility as familia, as adults in their life, to help move them into action.
All right. So the inspiration of young people, Rose?
Yes, I'd like to put them to work. I think that kids are out there floundering, many of them not a lot to do. Our parents are too busy with two families, the mother and the father are working, and the kids don't have anything to do. And many times people are very poor, and so they don't have any opportunities to go to college. So I really believe that this jobs bill and something in a project rebuild to put kids into construction and community service, service learning, even college students that can connect with community organizations to put on projects, and so they can work, be able to learn the value of their work and their time. And also the mentors. I think many of us are still around here that are willing to continue to mentor them. So I really encourage you to promote that while you're there in these years.
Thank you, Rose. Let me ask Melinda and Nancy this question, and that is, so we all have been around the issue of education, and we talk about it as a keystone to our future. And we know 54 million Latinos now in the United States of America, and the importance of us making sure that our young people are educated, graduating, not dropping out. We've been dealing with these issues for all of our lives up here. So let me ask Melinda and Nancy to respond. How best can we do that through looking at people like César, Dolores Huerta, so many others, and how can we inspire them to make sure that they stay on an educational pursuit?
Sure. Well, just like I said before, at the school that I'm at KIPP, there's no ifs. I mean, the kids know that once they enter the school, it's to start, to finish, to go to college, to finish it, and to give to the community. I mean, but it's just also being on top of them. And just as educators, just like Nita said, not to teach to the test. We don't do that. You have to teach them about their culture and let them know that they can do this. It's doable. We're not asking you to, like I tell them in my classroom, and they're watching, I'm not asking you to build a rocket so we can go to the moon, but if you do, that's awesome. But I'm asking you something that you can do it. It's doable. You can go to college, finish, and give to the community. But just like you were saying, when like sometimes my students, when they go to Miss Cubano's room, you know, like Christopher Columbus' story doesn't sound the same in Miss Cubano's room. Because for some reason, Miss Cubano comes up with letters that he gave to the Queen, and the kids come out of my room like, really? And we have a day? You know, so it makes them think. It makes them think, and that's what I'm there for, to put that seed and to tell them, like, it's not just, educate. It's not just what you, don't just take it for granted because it's in that book. Sometimes I have to, like, plant that seed and let them know, like, there's more to it.
So, Nancy, let me ask you this, a follow-up question, dig a little bit deeper here. So, the kids who are at KIPP and who have Miss Cubano as their teacher are very fortunate because we know they are going to be very successful. For all of those Latinos who are not in Miss Cubano's classroom, how can we get them into the position of the students who are in your classroom so that they have the same, si se puede, no is not an option, you're going to get it done. How do we get to that other universe of young
Just like you heard
Americans.
from all, the panel basically has said it. It's like advocate for yourself. Don't just sit there and do nothing. You have to move. And, like a lot of my students, they see me, they're like, you're going to go to the White House? And I'm like, yes, and you will see me there. I never thought I would be there.
You gotta
Never.
wave to them.
Hello, hi Kim. Escobar's here. So I told them, si se puede, I'm here. I never thought I could do it. And like yesterday, one of my students, Kiara, she was like, Miss Gordon, I'm so proud of you. But that makes me feel like if you did it, I can do it. I mean, why not? And I'm like, there you go. My job is done. You can go. So she now realizes that because Miss Cubano did it, she can do it. But she has to advocate for herself. She can't just, because Miss Cubano's helping me, it's going to happen. She has to do it by herself too.
Okay, Melinda, let me have you have a crack at that, and I'm getting some signals over here. No, let me ask Melinda to respond to that, and then we'll take one from the audience. So go ahead, Melinda.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking is I don't think there's anything wrong with the young people. I think it's there's systems, there's barriers, there's obstacles that we put in place for them. So I think, if you're in a place of a teacher, of a mentor, we've got to break down some of those barriers because young people want to be involved. And what I found is when folks are engaged in their community, they do better in school. So if they're only going to school and they're not connecting with the larger community, they're isolated from that and they're isolated from community engagement and activism, they do better. They do worse in school. So we've got to engage them in the community. This week is National Farm Worker Awareness Week. As a part of every week when César Chávez's birthday is, we have a week of celebration. There are thousands of young people all over the country that are celebrating this week today, tomorrow, raising awareness in their communities, doing blood drives. This is in collaboration with United Farm Workers and Student Action with Farm Workers and a lot of other partners that provide opportunities. It's peer-to-peer, young people talking to other young people about how to get involved. So some of it is that. It's just having young people share with each other, be peer mentors, peer support for each other to get involved in their community. So I think some of it is, there isn't really, young people are doing fine, they just need opportunities. And one thing we always hear from young people is that they want connection to seasoned advocates. They want relationships with folks who've been doing the work. So one of the simple things we do is try to just make those connections. Have young people have lunch with a young person. Talk to them about what you're doing. Having them shadow you for a day. Taking them on outreach. They really are longing for César Chávez's. They're really looking for people in their community who will have the courage to speak out against injustice. They want to see that, and they want to have relationships with people who are willing to do that.
Thank you, Melinda. All right. Well, I have a bunch of more questions, but I think it would be best if I called some people from the audience here. So let's go to the young woman in the back, and then we'll come to the young woman also over here in the white, and we'll take both of those questions, and then we may actually take that young man's question over there, and then we'll just have make sure you keep those in your heads, and we'll have you respond to that. We'll have a little bit of audience interaction. Go ahead, tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Indra Gomez, and I am a young Latina. First of all, I would like to thank all of the champions and the moderators and the César Chávez family for allowing me to be here, and also congratulations for being great role models, great examples for young Latinos like myself. I am currently a politics major at the Catholic University of America here in Washington, D.C., and I hope to be on the side of the policymaking someday. It's not an if, I will do it. I guess my question is that as a young Latina, I have always struggled with the sense of identity and the sense of, I was born in the United States, yes, but I come from a Latino family. So am I Mexican? Am I American? What is American? So I guess my question for the panel in general is, how did you face that challenge of identity, and how do you think that is affecting the young people that you are mentoring today, and how do you help them deal with that?
I think she's going to be president, huh? Give it a round of applause. That's a great question. Let me quickly we're going to take a couple more questions so we can get some other people involved. The young woman in the white, in the red beads.
My name is Laura Casas Fryer. I come from the Silicon Valley. born in Mexico, immigrated very young, a United States citizen, and feel very, very American. Last week I was in the Silicon Valley in a panel discussion on immigration, and there were some very conservative people, there were some Tea Partiers, and they just came up to me and just said, well, you know, we're in fear that you're taking over the country and we're losing our freedoms. And I just, for that moment, I thought, wow, they really are afraid. How do we deal with the fear of trying to be part of America, but then there's that resistance that
Okay. Let me thank you, Laura, and I had promised you I would take this question, and then we have so let's quickly take this question, and then I want you all, we're going to have another opportunity here in just a minute. So let's just take this last question.
Hi there, my name is King Chan, and I'm from Long Beach, California, and I wanted to thank you all. You're all very inspiring. And I also have to give a shout out to César Chávez for inviting me in the first place, so thank you very much. This truly means the world to me. I'm a former high school dropout, and so not many people would know that narrative until I tell it to them. And my question is, due to the political climate as it is today, do you believe a watered down or a so-called watered down version of the DREAM Act is acceptable, or should we push forward with a fully inclusive DREAM Act from the 111th Congress?
All right. We are going to take those questions under advisement, but we have a special guest that we can introduce here. So let me, first of all, ask you to give the panel a round of applause. They were marvelous. The questions are very good, both online and here in the audience. And I also want to take this moment as I introduce Valerie Jarrett, who is the President's senior advisor and who is in so many ways the architect of his campaign and is a heart and soul, really, of so much of what we do here. And I see that heart and soul in so many different ways, and her standing up for an inclusive America, no exceptions. And what she does is being the chairperson of the President's Council on Women and Girls. And every day she's fighting for all of us. But I also see it in the names of the people that the President and Valerie oversee and the people that they work with here in this House, including people like Cecilia Munoz, the first chair of the Domestic Policy Council ever in the White House, who's Latina, appointed by the President to serve in that position. And I see it in Julie Rodriguez from the White House who organized this event, and I see it in Stephanie Valencia and Felicia Escobar and Luis Miranda and so many other people, because this President is about having an inclusive America, and that means an inclusive White House. And one of the people who makes all of that happen every single day is my friend, the President's senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are just delighted to have you all here. Thank you, Secretary Salazar. I really do get to call him Ken, since I've known him since our first year of law school. So we go way back, and I could tell you all stories, but I won't do that right now. I also want to thank our terrific panel and to congratulate all of our champions. We all are here standing on the shoulders of others, and we just are so proud of each and every one of you, and the legacy of this very important champion for change is near and dear to all of our hearts. And so I have the privilege of introducing to you not only the President of the United States, but someone who is at his heart a community organizer. Please join me in welcoming President Barack Obama.
Have a seat. Si se puede. Thank you so much, everybody. Everybody, please have a seat. Thank you so much for joining us, both here in the White House and online, to celebrate one of our nation's great civil rights leaders, César Estrada Chávez. We are especially grateful to have some of his family members with us here today. And as we celebrate Cesar's 85th birthday, we're reminded that only in America could his story be possible. Only in America could a migrant farm worker rise to be a leader not just of his community, but a leader of his entire country. Of course, he didn't do it alone. He drew inspiration from figures like La Cosa, to ensure the dignity and respect of people who put food on our tables. Earlier this week, the Secretary Hilda Solis inducted the pioneers of the farm workers movement into the Department of Labor's Hall of Honor. And last year, Ken Salazar, where Ken went over there, designated the 40 acres site in Delano, California as a National Historic Landmark, forever commemorating the birthplace of the United Farm Workers. So we continue to honor Cesar's legacy. Today we honor 10 leaders who are building on that legacy, from providing legal services to farm workers and immigrants, to educating and empowering Latino youth. They're continuing his work in communities throughout the country. And ultimately that's how change happens, through men and women making the choice to be part of something larger than themselves. I want to read a quote from Cesar. He said, "We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others, for their sakes and for our own." I think that's those are good words to live by. And we are extraordinarily proud of him, but more importantly, we recognize through days like today that his spirit continues to ripple and move our nation towards greater justice. So thank you so much. Happy César Chávez Day.
Yes.
Thank you.